Hello, Jakarta and the world. I'm Doug Johnson, and this is White Trash Talking. The ceasefire began 2 days ago between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. And today I want to take a little deeper look at what's behind the agreement to get beyond the optics and the self-serving narratives that perpetuate this endless war. The ceasefire agreement will unfold in 3 stages, the first of which has already begun: the cessation of attacks and the release of some hostages on both sides, soon followed by the removal of IDF soldiers around the Netzarim corridor to allow for Gazans in the coming weeks to return to their homes in the north. This is accompanied by a surge of humanitarian relief into Gaza, including temporary housing. Stage 2 calls for the final hostage exchange and the complete removal of IDF soldiers from the Gaza Strip. Stage 3 is about rebuilding Gaza and negotiating a new government there. Okay, Trump has emerged as the champion of the ceasefire, yet I believe the ceasefire has little to do with Trump's bluster and threats, and more to do with the solid connection between the U.S. and Israel, which has never changed nor been in question. The U.S.-sponsored genocide, as well as the charade of this current ceasefire, clearly expose the truth that the U.S. was never an honest broker for peace, and in fact, never wanted peace between Israel and Palestine. Forget the silly argument that Biden wanted peace but Netanyahu wouldn't listen. Forget the silly old debate about whether the tail wags the dog or not. The two are one entity, and the control lies with the global hegemon, the U.S., while Israel projects U.S. interests throughout the Middle East. Resisting Israeli control, as the Palestinians bravely do, is tantamount to resisting U.S. control, and that is never tolerated anywhere in the world. The timing of the ceasefire is noteworthy. Neither the Americans nor the Israelis can withstand any more of this war and need a break due to the steadfast resistance of the Palestinians. Trump's inauguration comes at just the right time for everyone, including the Israelis who are not doing well, militarily or domestically. But sadly, this ceasefire also prefaces the U.S. and Israel's mutual plans for a post-war arrangement that annexes occupied Palestinian land while building alliances and business ties throughout the region. Perhaps the biggest loser in all of this is Netanyahu, as the U.S. seems to be withdrawing their support for his government. Or maybe it is just Trump who has had enough of Netanyahu. Here's a talk by Professor Jeffrey Sachs about Netanyahu that Trump posted on his media platform, Truth Social. Listen to what he says.
It's a game. This is the deep state, and they have their wars, and every war has been phony. Some wars the American people are basically never told about. For example, the war in Syria. And you may actually hear from grown-up reporters who are lying through their teeth or ignorant beyond imagining that, oh, the war in Syria, yes, Russia intervened in Syria. Well, do you know that that Obama tasked the CIA to overthrow the Syrian government starting 4 years before Russia intervened? What kind of nonsense is that? And how many times did the New York Times report on Operation Timber Sycamore, which was the presidential order to the CIA to overthrow Bashar al-Assad? 3 times in 10 years. This is not democracy. This is a game. And it's a game of narrative. Why did the U.S. invade Iraq in 2003? Well, first of all, it was completely phony pretenses. It wasn't, oh, we were so wrong, they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. They actually did focus groups in the fall of 2002 to find out what would sell that war to the American people. Abe Schultzky, if you want to know the name of the PR genius. They did focus groups on the war. They wanted the war all the time. They had to figure out how to sell the war to the American people, how to scare the shit out of the American people. It was a phony war. Where did that war come from? You know what? It's quite surprising. That war came from Netanyahu, actually. You know that? It's weird. And the way it is is that Netanyahu had from 1995 onward the theory that the only way we're going to get rid of Hamas and Hezbollah is by toppling the governments that support them. That's Iraq, Syria, and Iran. And the guy's nothing if not obsessive. And he's still trying to get us to fight Iran this day, this week. He's a deep, dark son of a bitch, sorry to tell you, because he's gotten us into endless wars, and because of the power of all of this in the U.S. politics, he's gotten his way. But that war was totally phony. So what is this democracy versus dictatorship? Come on. These are not even sensible terms.
This is amazing to hear on a somewhat mainstream channel, and it has been circulated throughout the alternative media. It's been written about in mainstream media, and it does mark a shift. It definitely does. I mean, Trump is opening the window here to show the machinations behind the scenes and to expose some of the dark secrets of the U.S. and it educates the people. But I think it signals that, not that this kind of stuff is going to stop, I just think it's no longer going to be hidden. And it's just going to be, Trump is in your face, right? And this shift that Trump is signaling here puts Netanyahu on notice that his head is on the chopping block, for sure. He's failed on every account as a leader, and Trump no doubt blamed him for the financial drain and disastrous PR that the genocide has caused the U.S. But this is where I disagree with both Sachs and Trump. This is the U.S.'s fault, period. Yes, Netanyahu truly is a deep, dark son of a bitch, but the U.S. listened to him, extended his leash, and granted him power. He was an extension of the U.S. The U.S. couldn't discern his evil nature and reject him because the U.S. leadership is just as evil. He is a branch of the U.S. So Trump ordered a halt to the fighting, and for the first time in many months, Palestinians came out onto the roads and went to see what was left of their home. And this clip captures the first day of the ceasefire.
Today is the first day of the ceasefire, and the Israeli army withdrew from Jabalia and other parts in the northern Gaza Strip. Residents and people who were forced to move from northern Gaza Strip to the Gaza city now are returning to their homes. As you can clearly see behind me, and allow me to step away. So people started to return to their homes.
I spent the last 3 months displaced in Al-Shati district. Thank Allah for the truce, and I'm now going to see how my house is. Hopefully I will find a few walls to live behind. I used to live in this building with my family and my uncle's families. It was a 5-floor building. The building used to host around 50 people, including my father, myself, and our families. As you can see, the house, the whole thing was reduced to rubble. 50 people of my family will live in the streets. Schools have also been destroyed. There is no life at all in the Kesasin area in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. This is our house and all of our neighborhoods, all of it destroyed. Even the mosque was targeted and destroyed. It is even difficult to set up a tent here.
It's unimaginable. And we have to try to put ourselves in their shoes. Imagine going home to that. It's mind-numbing is really what it is. Here's some drone footage of the Gaza Strip. This looks like a nuclear holocaust. It's unimaginable. Okay, so now I want to hear from two experts on Palestine, Ali Abunimah from the Electronic Intifada, followed by author and historian Norman Finkelstein. This is what Ali Abunimah had to say about Trump's motives for the ceasefire.
The question is, why is Trump doing this? I've had lots of people saying to me, Ali, Trump has no sympathy for the Palestinian people. I don't assume he does. He's never really expressed any sympathy for Palestinians. But what do we know about Donald Trump that's consistent is that Trump has expressed, as we saw with the Jeffrey Sachs video he shared, this impulse against the endless wars, not because he has great sympathy for the targets of U.S. imperial wars, but because he sees these wars as draining the United States and costing the United States. If that's the case, the question I would ask is, why would he care about Israel, which is a tiny country, a massive drain on the United States? According to Jeffrey Sachs, and in a video shared by Donald Trump, is dragging the United States into these wars that have cost literally trillions, have cost the United States literally trillions. And Israel, he looks at that and he says, well, we've sent them $25 billion just since October 7th, and
they can't
Joe
win.
Biden wants, sorry?
And they can't win.
And they can't win. And Donald Trump, there's one thing he hates is a loser.
Yes, that's true. I think Trump recognizes the value of Israel as a tool for the U.S. global hegemon. But yeah, he sees it as, rightfully, as a financial drain. I mean, we can use that money in the U.S. for sure. And it's wasted. Trump sees that they're not succeeding in their goal of ousting Netanyahu, or I'm sorry, the Hamas. And he's going to try to find another way around this problem. But let's continue listening to Ali Abunimah.
People are saying, oh, well, yes, but Trump wants to, he wants the Gaza thing to stop because he wants to push forward with normalization, with restoring the Abraham Accords and so on. In fact, he says that himself in a post on Truth Social that he put up after the ceasefire deal was announced. And of course, the big prize here, supposedly, is Saudi Arabia. And there have been, murmurings and rumblings that that's what he wants to do. And what I want to say about this is all of that may well be his intention. There's nothing in there that sounds great for Palestinians. He doesn't talk about Palestinian self-determination or even a Palestinian state. He doesn't mention it at all.
Yeah, the Abraham Accords, by the way, it's an agreement that was reached in 2020 between Israel, UAE, and Bahrain, and then later Sudan joined in, after the U.S. loaned it like a couple $2 billion. And they agreed to recognize Israel and Israel's sovereignty in exchange for bilateral business ties, basically, and investment ties, and mutual peace, a mutual alliance. So Trump is, and I think Jared Kushner was deeply involved in that, Trump's son-in-law, and Trump is interested in that, and they want to get Saudi Arabia involved. And Saudi Arabia, I think, was on the verge of joining before this Holocaust broke out, but they'll join, I'm sure. And it's a way of keeping Saudi Arabia in the U.S. orbit and not letting them drift over to the BRICS orbit. So, and the U.S. currency is at stake here. There's a lot at stake. So that's what Trump is up to, I believe. Okay, so finally, this is Norman Finkelstein, who's the author of 19 books, including The Holocaust Industry, beyond chutzpah and image and reality in the Israel-Palestine conflict. Here he gives historical context, very insightful context, to the current ceasefire.
There is an interesting analogy to what just happened with the ceasefire. That on January 17th, that is today, January 17th, 2009, Operation Cast Lead ended. That was the Israeli assault on Gaza. At the time, it seemed like a very large assault. It lasted from December 26th till January 17th. It ended because President Obama was going to be inaugurated president. And he didn't want this sideshow in Gaza to distract attention from his coronation. And so he told Israel, end the attack, and it did. The lesson to be learned from there is when an American president says stop, it stops.
Okay, so what was this year-long thing with Biden covered in the press that Biden was upset with Netanyahu, was calling him and cussing him out and trying to get him to stop, and Netanyahu wouldn't stop, and oh God, the world's like screaming at Netanyahu, please stop, and the U.S. looks good, but Israel looks terrible, and it's all a charade. It's all a bunch of BS. The U.S. wanted this war. Biden wanted this war. Biden is a cockroach. In my last post, I said this. So, I mean, it's true. He's a liar and a dirty cockroach. Here's how the press handles it. Here's from Haaretz how Trump scared Netanyahu into accepting a ceasefire. He sent his envoy who used so-called salty language. That's bullshit. You just, no. You just say stop, and they stop because they're in agreement. They're coordinating together. Here's another headline. The Guardian, a stern message from how return of Trump loomed over Gaza's ceasefire. And it goes, no, this was planned mutually. And like I said, the only victim here is Netanyahu. Yeah, he would like it to go on because he has his own agenda, but the world does not stop for that one man. Netanyahu is not that powerful. If he was, he wouldn't be in the deep trouble he is. Okay, so no, don't get caught up in that. That's just a lot of bullshit. All right, let's listen further to another message by Norman Finkelstein. Here he gives valuable historical context to the promised humanitarian aid.
There is the hostage exchange, but there is also a second aspect. That is the promise of admitting humanitarian aid on a high level, they say 600 trucks per day, allowing for the reconstruction of Gaza and all the rest. For those who don't know the history, lifting the blockade of Gaza, allowing for the reconstruction of Gaza and all the rest, it was promised after Operation Cast Lead. It was promised after Israel assaulted the humanitarian flotilla, the Mavi Marmara. It was promised after Operation Pillar of Defense in 2012. It was promised after Operation Protective Edge in 2014, and nothing came of it.
And it's likely that nothing will come from this promise. That's what Israel does historically, reliably. It breaks its promises. And even Trump is pessimistic about this ceasefire holding. I mean, according to what he says. I think, the U.S. does demand a ceasefire. We'll see how long it lasts. Okay, so I'm happy that the bombing has stopped in Gaza, at least temporarily, and that the Gazans can finally breathe. But I'm pessimistic about their future for the reasons I've outlined in this podcast. Perhaps on a more positive note, I've long felt that the U.S. is a dying empire, and the world will be better off when the U.S. can no longer attack the world. If the Palestinians can continue to resist until then, and I'm beginning to think that they can, then they will be free from the U.S. and Israel's evil and murderous grip. That's all I have to say. If you like what I say, please give me a like. Please subscribe. And I post once a week. Send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. I'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.